the year you spend with them. But I remember the first word of my Shabbat Shalom, guys. Welcome to
Boker Tov, Boker Tov.
Pesach is tonight. It is the special Shabbat Hagadol. We're supposed to be thinking about the Haggadah, about Pesach themes, so we've got a great issue teed up for you. Let's first thank God for the gift of learning Torah together.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לעסוק בדברי תורה. והערבנה אדוני אלוהינו את דברי תורתך בפינו ובפי עמך בית ישראל, ונהיה אנחנו וצאצאינו וצאצאי עמך בית ישראל, כולנו יודעי שמך ולומדי תורתך לשמה. ברוך אתה אדוני המלמד תורה לעמו ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
So, first of all, Shabbat Shalom, everyone who is joining us on this very special festive Shabbat morning. The issue that I wanted to tee up for all of us tonight for our Seder and for this Pesach has to do with the basic theme of Pesach, which is breaking out of our narrow categories, breaking out of our narrow straits. Mitzrayim is not just the land of Egypt. Mitzrayim is the place that limits us, circumscribes us, constrains us. And of course, we've all been living in that, called quarantine, called lockdown, called pandemic, for the past year. And so it's a natural theme. Yay, we get to break out of our quarantine, out of our narrow straits. We get to break out of our Mitzrayim. Summer camps that were closed last year, they're opening up this year. Fenway Park, which had cardboard cutouts last year, has live bands this year. TD Garden for the Bruins and the Celtics canceled last March. Live bands coming up. Schools that have been all virtual or hybrid are increasingly going all in person as an option. And so you get the sense of things lightening, of some resumption to some kind of new normal. And just then, when we are on the verge of breaking out of our narrow places, we have this new thing of, hey, I kind of like my cave. Or at least I'm not so ready to leave my cave. I have some ambivalence about leaving my cave. I'm kind of afraid to re-enter. I have all this apprehension about being with people again. And the Talmud has just the story for us as we think about our cave and how our cave gives us security so that we're kind of seduced into liking our cave and kind of impeded in thinking about leaving our cave, but then there are costs to it. So here's the story. Here's what we've got. It's from the tractate Shabbat in the Talmud. There's no Beatles today, and there's no Billy Joel. This is from the tractate Shabbat, and it tells the story of Shimon Bar Yochai. So Shimon Bar Yochai is talking to two rabbis, Rabbi Jose of the Maxwell House Haggadah, and Judah ben Gerim, and they are talking about Rome, having a political conversation. And you know how it goes when you have political conversations, not only in our time, but then. And they're talking about, what do we think about Rome? And Yehuda ben Gerim had favorable things to say about Rome. And Rabbi Jose just kind of kept his own counsel, didn't say anything. But Shimon Bar Yochai said to Yehuda ben Gerim, who liked Rome, hey, whatever Rome is doing, they're not doing it for us. They're doing it for Rome. And they're doing it for their own purposes, and they're usually malevolent. And Yehuda ben Gerim ratted out Shimon Bar Yochai. He let the Roman government know that Shimon Bar Yochai is no fan, but is a critic of the Roman government, as a result of which a death sentence went out for Shimon Bar Yochai, and he had literally to run for his life. So in the same way that we were thrown into our cave because of fear for our life, Shimon Bar Yochai and his son Rabbi Elazar are in their cave because they fear for their life. What I want to do, there's a number of moments in this story, and at each one of these moments, I want to just kind of really unpack what happened. So if you'll look, I'm going to read it. This was sent to everyone anyway, but I am going to just read this piece, and then we'll double click on how they must have experienced it. So they're running from the Romans. and they find a cave, and this cave is remote, and this cave is total social distance, and this cave is they see nobody, and this cave is there's a miracle. God supplies them with a magic spring, Poland spring, and there's just constant pure water and magic carob, and they can eat and drink. And here's we go. Then they went and hid themselves in a cave. Food was thus no longer brought to them, but a miracle happened, and a carob tree and a spring of water were created for them, and they drew their sustenance from these resources. The Gemara recounts their daily routine in hiding. They would shred their clothes and would sit covered in sand up to their necks. All day long they would study together. And when the time for prayer arrived, they would dress, cover themselves, and pray. Then they would return and shed their clothes, immersing themselves in sand once again, so that their clothes would not wear out from prolonged use. So here's the first vignette. A typical day in the cave, and we're going to learn this last 12 years, is they see nobody but one another. They eat nothing but carob. They drink nothing but water. And they do nothing but learn and pray. This is day after day for 12 years. How are they feeling about this, dear colleagues?
They don't even have toilet paper.
And they don't have toilet paper.
My first reaction is like, drinking the water in the carob. It sounds like Tom Brady, but that's aside. Anyway, it's I almost feel like that. The past year since last March, I see the four of you, and a few people in the building, and then at home, it's just me and Emma, which is my student. So the two of us just see each other, and really nobody else. We talk to each other on Zoom, and so I and it's it just you become very insular, so to the point that you almost sometimes don't even want to talk to other people,
Right.
or sometimes that you just don't even just even want to just be just by yourself.
Are you happy with that existence or not happy with that existence?
It's it's a mixed bag, because there are times that this is perfect, this is great, and there are other times that it's not. There are times that I just got to get out. I want to go do something. So what should we do? Should we go see a movie? Can't go see a movie. Should we go bowling? Can't go bowling. Should we do something else? Can't do something else.
Yeah.
So there are times that it's just it's just the two of you. I mean, I'm thinking like they study Torah, probably like 16 hours a day. Who knows what, right? There's got to be a point where it's just like this diminishing returns, and that I can't imagine that the relationship. There's a point where the relationship. It probably begins by getting stronger, but then there's probably a point where it ends up, also beginning to become weakening, because you can only be with this one person so much before it just becomes, a little more difficult.
I feel like they're living the Instagram quarantine life of like what you're supposed to be doing out there. I feel like, my children are studying Phineas and Ferb, and not Torah all day long, and there's a sense of like, how should you have used your pandemic time? Like, we should have learned how to knit, we should have learned how to bake the perfect sourdough bread. Like, we could be out hiking and biking and engaging nature. Like, my kids could have learned a whole new language, right? Like, what is it how were you using your time in the cave? And there's some sense of like, wait a minute, like, is it time? But we didn't do all those things that we were supposed to have done. And on a second point, I deeply resonate with the taking off the clothes in order that they not wear out, because having just tried on my children's shul clothes, my boys' shul clothes with them this morning, they don't fit. And like, none of the clothes that they were wearing last year to come to shul work for them today.
Can we talk about clothes in the pandemic? Because I was doing a small learning group with one of our about half a dozen times in the shul, and I was asking them for a symbol that would take in their experience of the pandemic. And one of the women who was in the group said, Lululemon yoga pants, stretch pants. And I said, great, why? And she said she has not worn a pair of pants with a zipper for a year. Because every day it's stretch pants. So there is. Just shut off. No, it's on. Is there another? Can I have another mic? Excuse me. Technical problems. It is on, but- I'll take the hands up, too.
In the meantime, rabbis, can I ask you a question? They studied 12 years in a cave. They didn't have enough clothes to take, but they took enough books to study.
I don't
Always.
think they have books, but no,
There were no books in
no,
those days.
they're downloading the Zohar from the Shema. They're not
So,
using books.
do they
are-
find they have Sepharia there?
It's not Sefaria. They're
They
literally-
are Safaria.
Yeah, they are Sefaria. They've memorized all of
They
Shema.
have everything in
They
in
have
their
everything
heads.
they need in their brains, and they are literally scanning the
Right.
heavens to download
And
wisdom for
right.
the future.
Now, is there? So anyway, they're not worried about clothes, and they have their own version of Lululemon pants because they're not worrying about that, and they're just completely focused on what they love. They love prayer, they love God, they love one another, and they love learning Torah.
How do you know that?
So, well, that's because that's
I'm
what
sure
they're
the
doing.
guy is this guy. You know, first of all, I have to say, you know, I have bar mitzvah students, and most commonly I ask them at some point, who are you working your bar mitzvah speech with? And they say, one of the rabbis. And I say, which rabbi? And they say, well, I don't know how it's called. The man, the one with the two women, which one? The one with the curly hair or the straight hair? So, first of
And
all,
your
there
point would be,
there are 5 rabbis here. I don't remember one of them.
Okay.
In this Talmud tractate, there are 5 rabbis. Anyway, so the 2 rabbis the 2 guys that goes to the cave.
father,
you know,
son,
Yeah, what's the name of them?
Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi
Bar Yochai.
Elazar.
Thank you, Garden Schwartz. Now I remember your name because of that. So he must be questioning himself for 10 years about what he said. Don't you think?
Ha. In other words, that's very interesting. Right. So he's filled with kind of some self laceration. Why did I say it? Why wasn't I an idiot? My whole life changed.
Exactly.
So there's a whole ruffled interior life. Regretting that here we are, I'm cut off from everybody because
Stuck studying
of-
Torah every day.
and I can't get out, I can't see.
I would say
So you're
Who wants to study
Elias, you're okay. So your read, and we'll come back to that in a minute. I just want to get Elisa on this first one yet. Your read is that he's fundamentally not so okay with it, and he's kind of critiquing himself for saying stuff that caused this whole mess to begin with.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, Elisa, what's your read? Are they happy or unhappy?
Well, so I just want to respond to that because I think this is a little bit of a Mordechai moment here. Like, I've always read Shimon Bar Yochai as like kind of he can't not know the impact of his words, and he can't not know, like, the text is very clear to set up this scene that, like, that there's going to be listeners, and like that's a thing that happens in the Roman community. So I've always imagined that he was just kind of like, I don't care about consequences. I don't care what it does to my family. I don't care what it does to anybody. I'm just going to speak the truth because I'm a wise Torah teacher, and that's what I do. And so I'm not sure, like, it feels like getting to the cave is in some ways ideal for him because he gets to do the one thing that he really cares about doing. He is away, the text is really clear that he has some complicated family relationships. He's avoiding those family dynamics. He doesn't have to deal with any of the big family gatherings. It's just him and his son. They get along. They do great. And he doesn't have to deal with clothes. He doesn't have to deal with food prep. Like, his life just got way better. And they're downloading the Zohar. They're downloading the spiritual technology that's going to sustain future generations. So
But
I
wait.
think-
You don't think at any point he misses his wife?
the text makes their relationship sound rather acrimonious. Like, the text makes her seem like she is annoying, cloying. Like, even though she saves their lives and feeds them in the Beit Midrash, like, it does not paint her in a very favorable
Yeah,
light.
there's a whole misogyny riff that you can do from this story.
You get it right
Which-
here. The
yeah,
minds
yeah,
of women
there's
are easily
there's-
swayed.
There's a misogyny riff. It is also
You
just,
said it. I didn't want to read that
No,
loud.
I'm also
You
just
know,
noting.
I'm
just
more
to-
concerned about the consequences at home.
Right. No, I'm also just noting and observing. This is a separate conversation. There's also kind of like a Jewish racism piece too, because the person who spreads the calumny about Shimon Bar Yochai is Yehuda ben Gerim. Yehuda ben Gerim means Yehuda, the son of converts. So there's kind of like a sense that you can't really trust converts, even though the Talmud otherwise repudiates that version entirely and says you can't even ask somebody when somebody becomes a Jew, then there's no more asterisk. So that's kind of mainstream Jewish point of view, but this particular text is unlovely both as regards misogyny, separate conversation, and as regards Jewish racism, separate conversation. But here we are. But your point, Eliza, is that Shimon Bar Yochai is a kind of deeply spiritual sort. He's the founder of Kabbalah and the Zohar, and this allows him to clear his calendar from all distractions. No emails, no meetings, no deliverables, no monthly status report, no profit and loss, no grocery shopping, no laundry, no nothing. Just I get to study Torah and think. So for a person who is like a cat rabbi, so to speak, a person who's kind of reclusive, he's very happy. So pick
Wait,
up.
I
So
just
Elisa,
wanna-
will you pick
Speaking
up
for
with?
yourself, my friend.
Yeah. So I just want to pick up to the next vignette. The Gemara continues.
The Gemara continues. They dwelt secluded in the cave for 12 years. Then one day, Elijah the prophet came and stood at the mouth of the cave, and he proclaimed, "Who will inform the son of Yochai that the Caesar has died, and the decree has been annulled?" Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai and his son heard this, and they emerged from the cave.
Okay. Now, the Talmud here, like the Torah that doesn't speak about interior life, like you don't know what Abraham is feeling on the way to the binding of Isaac. It just says Nafku. Shimon bar Yochai and his son emerged after 12 years, and so my question to you guys is, how do they feel? Because it's like our moment now, right? Like the pandemic's kind of sort of ending. You can kind of leave. You can start to think about reentry. How do they feel, Lord Dan Essen? How do they feel?
This is the 12 years in the cave is a total failure. Because what's the purpose of studying Torah? Torah Lishma, yes, and all this mystical stuff. But what's the purpose of Torah? The purpose of Torah is to teach us how to interact and react and be with people and the world in the most moral possible way. And so the 12 years in the cave is 100% failure because we see what happens afterwards, right? This is my take on this. So they've been there for 12 years. What have they learned? They've learned nothing. They haven't, because what he did was wrong at the beginning, and when he comes back out, he hasn't learned anything.
Okay.
Well, can I just jump on there? I think there's a distinction between hasn't learned anything and sort of which category of learning is he doing. And I agree with you, Amar Rabbi Akiva, right? What's the klal gadol in the Torah? It's, V'ahavta l'recha. You guys can all sing it. It's beautiful. But like, yes, on the one hand, on the other hand, as Elisa is saying, this is just this powerful mystic Torah that emerges from this space and from this place, and they do have a real sense of depth and connection and fire for God, and they've really literally fire for God, and they just are passionately caught up in the world of connection between here and here.
Right.
And I think like there's something really important about that for us now, right? Because there are some ways in which in our solitude we have found new depth, some of us in ourselves or in our families, in the connections that we have in some of the still small places. And yet when they try to go back, like, people aren't doing things the way that they do things. So
Right.
I know you haven't gotten
So I just want to know at this moment, but we haven't yet had them encounter the farmer. I just want to know at the moment before they encounter the farmer, when they hear from Elijah, hey, it's time to go. Governor Baker says we're reopening or we're increasing reopening. How do they feel before they've encountered anybody? They now know they have to leave the cave. They have to leave the cave. They have to leave their routine for 12 years. They have to actually see people again before they get to see the people. How do they feel when Governor Baker, Elijah the prophet, makes that first announcement?
All right, two things before that. I agree with Dan Nesson. I don't agree with you, Michelle. Sorry about that. The second is that when I see Elijah at the top of the mountain, the only thing I could picture is tonight Elijah showing up and saying the pandemic is over. Wouldn't be
Amen.
that a miracle and
Can you
beautiful?
hear us?
Amen.
Yes, but with that being said, this will be very, very, will create so much fear and anxiety.
Right. If Elijah did, just take that thought. If Elijah said the pandemic is over, you're free to go to shul tomorrow morning. No masks. If Elijah did that, right? Most people would not come to shul without masks. Most people would say, if we take your thought experiment, if Elijah the prophet said the pandemic is over, the virus is dead, we can go back without masks to your old life, most people would not come to shul. There'd still be a lot of trepidation about going to Fenway. There's just an ambivalence and an anxiety and an apprehension, and I got my brakes on. And I just want to try to understand that. Elisa, do you understand that?
Well, so I think there's a really important distinction in the text, which is Elijah doesn't say to them, it's time to leave your cave. He doesn't say to them, come out, wherever you are, like come back to civilization. Elijah says, who's going to tell these people that they could, that the decree against them, that the death sentence against them has been annulled? And that's a really important distinction because they went to the cave without their intention going to the cave was to save their lives, but they weren't actually clear about what they were going to be doing in that cave, and they weren't clear about the significance of what they were going to be doing in that cave. And when they leave, they also leave without intention because they're not clear what they're doing leaving the cave. They're not clear what they're going back to. They're not clear why they're going back. They have no intention in going. And so it's this very weird in between zone where I think part of the importance of our cave is like we have to be really clear about what's the work we've done in pandemic. What's the learning that I have done? And then if I'm going to leave the cave, I have to know why am I doing this? Why am I leaving quarantine? What is it that we have as a civilization accomplished? What is it as a community that we've accomplished? And what am I bringing with me? Where am I going to? Where are we going to? There's a lot of questions and none of that's the answer.
Is it enough to just say I stayed alive?
I don't think so. I think what they see, if they stay alive and we see that's not enough.
Okay, so let's see what happens. Lord Denison, will you pick up because this got you very exercised? As they venture back to civilization, will you read that? We're on the bottom of page 1. As they venture back to civilization.
I see. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yes, I found it. As they ventured back to civilization.
Yeah.
Sorry. As they ventured back to civilization, they saw some people who were plowing a field and growing crops there. Angered by this, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai declared, "These people are forsaking the pursuit of the life of the world to come and occupying themselves instead with the concerns of the transitory life." And therefore, everywhere Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai and his son would cast their gaze, the object of their vision would immediately be incinerated. Finally, a heavenly voice rang out and proclaimed to them, "Have you emerged from seclusion in order to destroy my world? Return to your cave."
So let's pause, okay? So they come out and they've got a chip on their shoulder and they see a farmer working. And Eliza, what happens and why?
They are filled instantly with rage. Their eyes become like laser fire missiles and burn everything that they touch.
And why? What did the farmer do to them?
The farmer is just, instead of busying himself with Torah, instead of focusing on the heavens, instead of deepening his connection to God and the mission of the Jewish people, he's working the fields.
And Michelle, what's wrong with that?
Oh, I'm exactly on the opposite side here.
Yeah.
Right.
These
So-
two idiots are coming from the cave that the only thing that they did was study Torah, no human interaction. They don't know how to behave in the world, and they are coming to tell us what to do.
Right.
Well, so for me, it's about patterns, right? When we get into our patterns and we've done things in a particular way in a particular time. You often see this in marriages when a lovely bride and a groom come to you and they say, "But this is how we do Pesach. Like, obviously, this is how you do it." And the spouse says, "What are you talking about? This is how we do it, and it's so obvious that you do it that way." And there becomes conflict over all sorts of small little pieces of behavior that actually really bring fire into the
Right.
marriage, fire into the and I think in some ways in retreating to our own lives here, to our own caves, we've all developed we've all solidified whatever family pattern it is that we have, thus making it really hard to think about external social interactions in quite the
Right.
same way, because obviously what we were doing was the right thing.
Can I just try to make the case not for Shimon ben Yochai and Rabbi Elazar? I'm not defending it, but I do want to explain it. And I was thinking about it just this morning on the walk to shul. Okay, I think it's totally understandable. I get it 100%. I'm walking to shul on Ward Street, and I see a woman walking with a dog, and she eyes me suspiciously because I'm a human, and I eye her suspiciously because she's a human. And we kind of do this.
no.
No. Let me just finish. We do this dance. Who's going to go this way? Who's going to go this way? And I don't want to see her, and she doesn't want to see me. And we go like this. and I managed to avoid a human.
No, I think
Good.
she
No, just
recognized you are the senior rabbi of Temple
Yeah.
Emmanuel. She's Jewish. He doesn't want to come to shul. She's avoiding you, so you won't say to her, "Hey, why are not coming to shul? Are you
yes.
going to
Well,
watch
that
us
was
on live
that was
stream?"
the pre-pandemic reality, but now no. So what
I
I will
love
say is
that,
that
Wes.
if
Yeah.
you so if you're used to like people are the enemy because people are the virus. People are potentially the virus. And I think this is a real problem. We are going to have to learn how to be people again. When I walk, when you walk, when we walk, and we see somebody coming, we go that way, they go that way. And if that's what you've lived for 12 years, the only people that we see in our pod are each other and our immediate family. And beyond that, we don't see, right? Then you can kind of understand why a person. By the way, this week, at the shul, we were Andrews, catering by Andrews, was delivering Pesach food to Temple Manual people and other people who were doing a pickup. And all along Ward, if any of you did that, you were in line in the car for a good long time. Like all along Ward Street, there were people and cars. And I looked at it and I thought, oh my God, I'm not programmed anymore to process this. Like all these people. And I think that's what's going on. Dan?
Yeah, so I agree. The first question is, what about the dog? The dog was happy to see you. But the other question is, the other thing is, I think about the fact that their reaction is so 100%. There's no amelioration. There's no part way. And I was thinking, I think it's the Kotzker Rebbe that tells the story about the wagon wheel. And the tefillin, if people don't know that story, there's a person changing a wagon wheel, and he's wearing.
Maybe it's Kaka Berdichev.
Thank you, British. Thank you. So he's changing, and he's wearing his tefillin, and he's davening while he's saying this, and one person says, "Look at this terrible person. He's changing his wagon wheel while davening," and then the other response is, "Look at how fabulous we are." Well, we can change a wagon wheel. We can be in the world and also be connected with God. So there's no, I'm more looking for that. I mean, because the person changing the wheel wasn't in the cave
Right.
for 12 years.
Right.
But I'm also with you. Like, when here in the building, half the time, God forbid, I have to pull my mask out because I forgot to put it on. As soon as I go outside, I'm exactly the opposite. So there's a lot of ways in which I'm kind of with you in that
Right.
feeling.
Alive?
So I have to agree with you that regardless if you agree with these two guys or not, Rabbi Garden Shorts and Rabbi Berger. Anyways,
I'm a guy now.
well,
Keep-
no,
No,
I'm not going
just
to go there. But
keep-
this could be. I was going to say that this could be a historic moment. Rabbi Elisa Berger defending a guy who leaves his wife and studies Torah all day long. It's epic. Anyways, so I was going to say something I forgot. Oh no, I went to the copy machine yesterday.
Yeah.
I went to the copy machine, and for a moment I started thinking on a typical Thursday afternoon at Temple Emmanuel before the pandemic, not in the sanctuary, in our area. Bar mitzvah kids coming back and forth, passing by. So many of our people that help us during our basics things there. Many more people working, many more offices open, phone calls and this and that, and people coming to your office for bar mitzvahs and weddings and stuff. Very hectic, very hectic. And I love the quietness of now. It's
Yeah.
like anytime I feel like I want to do something, I want to study something in my office, perfect.
Right, and can I just say,
calm,
I
beautiful.
again, I don't want to defend Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi Elazar's, mean-spiritedness towards this nice little farmer over here, but I understand. I just think there's an emotional rawness that comes. An emotional rawness is when you transition from a cave to beyond the cave. Okay, now let's pick up what happens next. Dan, you're on a roll here. Return to your cave. So the two went and returned to the cave. And use your microphone, Dan.
We rise, please.
Right.
9
No.
lines from the bottom of the.
Okay.
I know.
No, I'll just read it. So the two went and returned to the
Okay,
Your
cave,
special
and they
I have-
dwelled there another 12 months, a
12
full
months.
year in all. At that point, they said to themselves, "The sentence of evildoers in Gehenna endures for no more than 12 months. Perhaps our sentence has expired by now as well." A heavenly voice rang out and proclaimed, "Emerge from your cave." So they go back, they flunk re-entry. They flunk re-entry. They spend a baker dozen 13th year in the cave, and then they come out. Now, how are they feel? Like, what are they thinking about? How does the 13th year differ in character and kind from the first 12?
So I think one major difference is that there's a heavenly voice that's like, "You're ready." Like the timer on the oven went off. Like it's actually ready to come out of the oven. I think previously, like, it's like leaving the quarantine before everybody's been vaccinated, before everybody has herd immunity, like leaving our safety practices before we're actually safe. Now they're ready to go. They have brought together the divine scholarly work that they've done in the cave with an awareness of the world around them, and they are now internally driven to seek the world outside rather than being externally driven by this possibility that they could.
Okay, so let's see what happens next. Elias, will you pick up? There's going to be some individuation between father and son in this next paragraph. The Gemara recounts their second return to civilization.
You make fun of me not finding my place.
They emerge from the cave and again encounter people seeking their livelihood through ordinary means. This time, though, Rabbi Eleazar Garden Schwartz would destroy something through his fear gaze. Fiery gaze. Thank you. Rabbi Shimon, his father, would kill it. Presently, my son, the world has enough total devotees of Torah study in you and me alone. Wow, they are so full of it themselves. We need not to hold others to our standard of devotion and diligence.
So I just want a brief note here. The father and son have been like one for all these 12 years. And now the son still has got like this intensity and fiery anger. The father seems to be softening a bit. There's some individuation. What do you make of this?
Well, clearly, I'm sorry. No, we don't know how old was the son when they left.
We don't know.
So perhaps he didn't experience much of living in community.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm so intensely mindful of how much harder it is for the kids to come out of this than it is for us. Like,
say more.
For us, I mean, even 12 years in the life of somebody who is old is like he gets at some level that ultimately he's going to have to chill from his standards. It wasn't what his life really was about. The majority of his life, serving God in this intense way was really a privilege for him in this time. He freaked out a little. He was emotionally raw, as all are. But ultimately, in this extra year, he's able to find his way back to engaging, to living in a world, to dealing with an imperfect world. And I think for those who are younger, for whom what they're experiencing is a bigger portion of their lives. And by the way, what his father taught him, like this is not just Torah. This is his father's Torah. And he has internalized it, and he's carrying it around with you. And I'll just share, in a very raw way, that one of my son's friends had a birthday party outside at a playground about a week and a half ago. And I took him, it was like 25 minutes into Arlington. I mean, anyway, so it's one of those you can't get there from here kind of places. And we went and there we are, and we got to the playground, and there's, presents and kids, and there were a lot of kids. And my son said, no, I'm not going. And I managed to get him out of the car. And he simply could not engage with the people there. And by the way, we're back to that, the year, right? And the timer going off. I was in a position of the 12 year because in truth, the kids actually were a little too close to each other.
Right.
The kids actually, and we're not done with the pandemic. And there was a sense in which, like, can I really do what I would have done before the pandemic of like pushing him go play? Or is he holding on to something that's actually still true, which is I'm not yet comfortable sitting on that slide with you, back to back right there.
Wow. And that's such a, very important insight, Michelle. When we think about, let's say, our preschool kids who have masks on all the time, or our younger kids, they can't remember a time without masks. Like they think masks are normal. Right? Our preschool kids know nothing but masks. Our younger kids know nothing but masks. They can't remember a time without masks are normal. So I think you're absolutely right that generationally, depending on how much tire you have in your tread before the pandemic,
Yeah, in years to
you-
come in Purim, they are going to wear masks just for fun.
yeah. Okay,
To
Michelle, will you
recount the old days.
pick up the end of the story? So the father is softening. The Gemara continues as night began to fall.
As night began to fall late Friday afternoon, Rabbi Shimon and his son saw a certain old man who was clutching 2 bundles of myrtles and was running home with them as twilight descended. They said to him, "These myrtle bundles, for what do you need them?" He answered them, "They are in honor of the Sabbath." Rabbi Shimon and his son questioned, "But could you not have sufficed with just 1 bundle?" He answered them, "One is for Zachor and one is for Shamor." Hearing this, Rabbi Shimon said to his son, "Look how cherished the mitzvot are to the Jewish people. Each nuance of the law they celebrate separately." And they were appeased.
Oh my God.
Such
Okay,
a
what do we do?
beautiful-
What do we do with this
So
story?
beautiful.
What do we do with this? And what do we do with this? What do you think?
Happy ending.
So, in the sense, you have to relearn again how to dan l'kol adam l'kaf zachut, like how to judge others. When they come out of their cave, they're all about Torah. They're all about mitzvahs. They're all about God. They're all about this direct connection
Right.
up and being the best you can be. And when they get back out in the world, they see the worst in the people who are out there. And in this beautiful story, they find a way to merge because they stop and they ask a question. They actually have to linger long enough to try to understand the motivation behind what looks on the surface
Right.
to be a not Torah mitzvah move.
Does anyone here find this story super scary and this resolution super unsettling? Totally.
Yeah, I'm
Love
with you
this
on that.
resolution.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's totally. Why are you? I find this just a super scary, super frightening, super unsettling resolution. Why do you find it something like that?
It doesn't feel like a resolution. I mean, I love your Torah about them asking a question and feeling the answer and being present. But what I see is they happen to be leaving the cave when it was about to be Shabbos, and so like what they happen to see is people getting ready for Shabbos instead of doing their regular work. And so it's coincidence. It's not an intentional change on their part.
Right. And by the way, they're only at peace because this guy's both a farmer and a Jewish scholar who can, reap and sow 2 myrtles, whatever a myrtle is, and say Shemor v'Zachor because I know about the 2 revelations at Sinai. So for this narrow band of person who's farmer and scholar and Shamor and Zachor with the 2 myrtles, they're at peace. But the first guy was just a farmer. What's wrong with that? They
Can I
can't
say-
deal with difference. They
can I-
can't deal with
no.
anybody who's not like them.
Can
I
say
find it
something?
super
I need to
unsettling.
bring up something, please.
Yes,
please,
Elias,
please.
and
And then
then
I
Dan.
get to your point, please. I'm going to do it quickly. So the next paragraph that we don't read is fabulous. So when rabbis and cantors, we love each other all the time. There has been never any conflicts among any history among rabbis and cantors. So I'm sure rabbis love when cantors take one word and they go up and down 5 scales and come back and take forever. So this is what produced being the other way. So it says that the guy, before went into the cave, he could do 12 answers to one question. So for me to read it from the cantorial perspective, I would say, now he matured. Finally, he's able to provide one definitive answer to the problems. And they say, now he can offer 24 answers to the question. This guy needs to go to a mental institution. It's unbelievable. He cannot be decisive. He cannot, anyways. So this is my view on it. But what you are saying was it's really scary. Of course, it's really scary. The outcome and this ending is kind of like a movie, Hollywood movie. Oh, now Shamor v'Zachor, we appreciate, we understand, so
Right.
beautiful.
See, I
But-
disagree.
Well, hold on.
Lord
Finish-
Nelson, you want to
No,
say
just
something?
Elias. Finish your point, and then Dan, you're next.
No. I thought you wanted to do on a scale up and down. I don't see it.
You don't see what?
I don't see that this is going to end like Shamor v'Zachor. Oh, so beautiful.
Right. It's a Hollywood ending, and it takes somebody who's farmer, scholar, to make them appeased. What happens when they just go to CVS? What happens when they have to fix their gas? What happens when they have to change their oil and they go and they have to sit and wait for the person to change their oil for half an hour, and they're actually exposed to the
But
world of
that's
people
the
who are
point,
not
is that the
scholars.
Shamor V'Zachor guy is their training wheels, right? That's their opportunity. That's their, I stop, I ask the question, I try to see the
Right.
Tselem Elohim in the person before me.
Right.
And when I study not only my divine connection to God without my
Okay.
clothes up to my neck, but I actually start to study people, I discover that inside of them is a beautiful Torah as well.
Okay, so Dan, we're gonna hear
yeah,
you,
yeah.
and then I'm gonna close with a very simple question. Dan, last comment.
Okay, so I disagree, and I'll tell you why. Because the first time they emerge from the cave, they're saying that and they see the farmer. They say he's not doing the pursuit of Olam Haba. He's not studying for Olam Haba, and they're not there. But the second time, now this time they're noticing that. That people can do both. They can be regular people, and the other thing is I say that they're also recognizing that the average Jew does know the difference between Shamor and Zachor. It's not this guy's not a Torah scholar. He's just an average Jew, Jew in the pew that just happens to be rushing home for Shabbat. So the other thing is I just think it's that the father has a definite substantial change from the first time that he emerges from the cave, where he now can see that people, if you're not thinking only of Olam Haba, but if you're thinking of this world and doing the mitzvot, that's actually part of God's intention as well.
Okay, so thank you, Dan. So I want to just zoom out for a second and close with a simple question. What do we learn about this story of leaving a cave as we think about leaving our cave? What's the lesson from this story about cave leaving for our own existential state of cave leaving? Elisa?
So I think one thing that comes out of this is, Elias, you had said his inability to edit himself, his inability to be concise, his inability to function, the rabbi's inability to function within what others deemed acceptable meant he should go to a mental institution. I think there are ways in which we feel like sometimes when we don't fit in, when we don't belong, we have to pull ourselves away. And when the world is broken, we have to pull ourselves away. And I think that this story teaches that there's power to sometimes pulling yourself away. There's power to taking yourself out of the game and taking some time to download the wisdom that you need to solve future problems. But that's not an answer. That's not an acceptable answer. That actually what we desperately need is for each one of us to be functioning in the world in a way that we support one another, in which we see the best in one another. What we really need is to be able to be together in community, downloading wisdom from Shemaim. We need to create a world in which each person has the capacity to do their best work in the context of community, and they don't have to go to a cave to get that done.
Elias, what's the lesson for you?
The lesson is as everything we do in life, we are used to do things, and then when we stop doing them, it's hard to come back and re-entry and do it in the same way we used to do it. And it's also this idea of the balcony scene, how you see things when you are not doing them anymore, and the challenges that it presents. And that includes us re-entering society after the pandemic.
Dan, what's the lesson?
Yeah, I think the lesson is that it takes a substantially long time to move back into what was the normal, and that maybe the normal is not even going to be the same.
Michelle?
To me, there are a number of things, maybe 24 answers.
You were Rabbi who?
No, I mean, I would start with leaving the cave is not easy. It wasn't easy to go into the cave, and it's not easy to leave the cave. And I think that's just an obvious truth, and that we have to check. And this story reminds me that we have to check and be mindful of the places that we're raw, and just hold that for ourselves and hold that for others, because there are going to be people who are on fire when we get back, and we have to try to think about creating space for that sense of incineration that is coming in not only our own emotions but in everybody else's emotions in those spaces and places. And then I think they're changed, not right away, but they're changed by this experience. And my hope would be that, God willing, Elijah should come and tell us that we're ready to go at our Pesach Seders. But I think in the same way that every Jew knows Shamor and Zachor, like, that lighting the Sabbath candles back in their ages for keeping and remembering, so too we're coming to the holiday of Passover. And, wherever you are, most Jews around the world are celebrating Passover at some basic level. And that in our celebration, which is different this year, that we should see in each other a shared history, a shared destiny, and that when we come back together, whenever that will be, that we could look for the best in each other, be changed by this time away from each other, so that we're stopping to ask the question, like, who are you? How are you? What are your values and your beliefs? And that we really can build a world in which we are appeased and can come back together again.
Thank you, guys. So I'll just build on everything that everybody said. I think this story is about the need for patience. We're in a hot mess. We are in a hot mess. And even if the numbers go in a good direction, and even if vaccinations go up, and even if we're in for reopening, and even if summer camp is ramping up, and even if you could go to Fenway, hot mess is where we live. And there's just turned to be tremendous rawness. And when I was, when I saw this woman who I didn't even know from Adam, and I thought enemy of me, and she thought enemy of me, and we went that way. That is how we have been programmed for a year. We've all been warped by that. We've all been damaged by that. We've all been maimed by that. We have been maimed by that. We now see somebody who's not in our pod as somebody to avoid, which is exactly counter to how we were before the pandemic. It's going to take a long time to unlearn that, to see somebody and say, oh, how are you, and to connect. That's just like been fatal and lethal to do that for a long time. So to be able to go from like that to encounter, that's just such a complete subversion of of our pandemic conduct. It is hot mess, and that means a lot of raw. That means a lot of rage. That means a lot of incineration. That means a lot of unsettled. And I think this is about, if we can acknowledge that, we need to be patient with one another, and we need to be patient with ourselves. We need to be super patient with ourselves. Shabbat shalom, Chag Sameach. Have a fabulous
Sameach,
set of Seder's.
everyone.
Chag Sameach, Shabbat Shalom.